It appears the TransAsia plane that crashed into a river in Taiwan suffered engine failure. 31 people were killed in the latest air disaster to hit Asia. Initial investigations suggest the fuel supply to the engine was interrupted. So was the accident unavoidable, and should we be concerned about air safety in Asia? Joining me now via Skype from Beijing is former director of the Civil Aviation Authority, and Captain Colin Jordaan, who's still currently flying planes. Captain Jordaan, thank you very much for being with us from China this morning in our time here in Johannesburg. Any idea yet from your side of the world about what could have gone wrong here?
Good morning, Dan. As you mentioned, there was an indication of engine failure. One of the pilots on board did a Mayday call. Mayday is the international distress call that we do to immediately get attention of the air traffic controllers. And he indicated that they had an engine flame out. Engine flame out on a turboprop means that the jet engine turning the propellers has stopped working. It can be for a variety of reasons. We're not sure at this point in time, and I certainly haven't seen any reports here in China on what possibly caused that engine to fail. The interesting thing is that all of these aircraft are designed to operate at maximum takeoff weight, or certainly a limited weight if you're doing high altitude stuff. And they're designed to operate with one engine inoperative. So that aircraft should have been able to stay airborne and continue climbing away for them to come back and land quite safely.
What could have happened? What could then have happened for them not to be able to keep it up in the air?
Dan, there is speculation that this type of aircraft, when you have an engine flame out or something happens to the engine, the propellers automatically go into a streamlined position so that the big disc of the propeller doesn't provide drag. And that's done so that obviously the aircraft presents as little drag as possible to the forward flight of the airplane. There is suggestion that this didn't happen on this particular engine. And so if you have this big wind-milling disc causing a lot of drag, that can cause the airplane not to be able to maintain its altitude. And we do see in the video that the wings were level just before it rolled to the left and went into the river, hit the bridge and went into the river. And that very often happens if you get the airspeed too low and then there's not enough rudder authority to counteract the pull of the live engine on the other side.
Do you think the pilots were not experienced enough to have dealt through this, or do you think, because we had earlier reports that this was not an old plane at all, or maybe it could be a problem with the manufacturing problem?
This particular type of airplane has had a number of accidents. I think 15 accidents and incidents in the last 20 years that it's been in operation. Many of them caused by early icing problems. But that shouldn't be the problem. And engine failure is something that is you train for all the time. That is engine failure on takeoff is one of the most critical situations you can have in an airplane. And every pilot is required to do repetitive training initially when they do their conversion onto that airplane type, and then every 6 months when you're doing your license renewal. So they should have been experienced enough to handle it, and it also would appear that this was a training flight of sorts, because they mentioned that there's 2 pilots or 2 captains sitting in the front, and the co-pilot, first officer, was sitting in the observer seat. But we're not sure at this stage.
Yeah, should we worry about flying around Asia? I mean, I'm asking this in the light of what we've seen happened last year with Air Malaysia and Air Asia, you know, and now we see this TransAsia flight, or is just that being alarmist? I mean, that their safety records is still very good.
You know, I think what you've seen in Asia, particularly in the last 10 years, is a huge increase in flying. And in air transport in particular. And very often what happens is that when you have these airlines expanding at a large rate, the level of experience, overall level of experience of their pilots drops. I mean, that's just that's the way it is, because you're continually bringing new and inexperienced pilots into your pilot pool. So that certainly could be a factor. That as opposed to airlines like South African Airways or any of the major airlines, where your pool of pilots collectively has got a huge amount of experience, a huge amount of training experience, and operational experience. You probably find that many of these airlines, in their expansion, don't have the luxury of that sort of experience, and it could be a contributory factor.
Thank you very much. That's Captain Colin Jordaan. He's a former director of the Civil Aviation Authority, also still currently flying.